This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is 1977's The Sentinel, directed by Michael Winner. And this is a seminal horror movie for me, which is to say, I saw it very early on in my horror watching career, I guess. And it really freaked me out. This movie struck me as genuinely creepy and really hard to watch. Now keep in mind, that was coming from the perspective of a 12 or 13-year-old. Does The Sentinel stand up today? I have to say, on the whole, definitely not. It's not nearly as violent as I recall it being at the time. There are technically two particularly intense terms of violence, set pieces. Though on the whole, it's very much about mood and atmosphere, which I think it does pretty well. And it's in the vein of The Exorcist, which it was obviously inspired by. That being said, while it doesn't quite hold up to what I recall it being, it's still really good. Part of what impresses me is the way Michael Winner handles the story. Though, speaking of the story, if you haven't seen it before, and I suggest you do watch it, it is really worth seeing. It revolves around a woman who is chosen to be, I think her name was Allison, if I recall, in the movie. And she's chosen to be the next guardian of the gates of hell. The story behind The Sentinel is fairly involved, yet Michael Winner manages to tell that story without voiceovers, without text crawls, without expositional dialogue, until, I want to say, perhaps towards the third of the movie, where he explains why things happen as they do. This is a feat, and I have yet to see a modern director who could do it as well. The best example of this, I'd have to say, would be the Star Wars movies, which is to say they open with these text crawls, giving you all sorts of information about what's going on and why. The Sentinel doesn't have any of that, yet it's so clear. And a story that Winner gets across so winningly, see what I did there, revolves around the idea of a Christian sect that takes after the Archangel Gabriel. According to the movie, the Archangel Gabriel stood guard over the gates of hell. This secretive order of the Catholic Church appoints a sentinel, and this sentinel does exactly what the Archangel Gabriel did, which is to stand guard over the gates of hell. Now, if you think about it, this doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense, never mind the religious stuff, which is also kind of silly. But what is the Sentinel protecting against, really? I get that they're at the gates of hell, but as depicted by the movie, I'm not at all sure how hell differs from literally everyday life. So that's a little odd. In any case, Allison is a model who happens to be dating a lawyer who's played by Michael Miller. And he wants to marry her, but she doesn't want to marry him, at least not yet. She wants to spend some time on her own. And the movie goes into her background to tell us why that is. And it makes very little sense. And that's kind of surprising to me, if only because Michael Winner, who co-wrote the screenplay for the movie, handles the secret Christian organization really well, with no expository dialogue or anything. Yet he kind of botches this, because what happens is that Allison comes home from school, and she finds her father in bed with two very voluptuous women. And this drives her to attempt to kill herself. Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense to me. Now keep in mind, the movie also gives no information about Allison's mother. We don't see her. I assume she's not in the picture. So why the idea of her father engaged in a threesome would somehow drive her to commit suicide is very odd. Though part of me was bothered by it because it made it all about her, which was weird. But in any case, her attempting suicide, I should say, makes her a candidate for the Sentinel. I want to say the Sentinel program very badly, but that's not quite what it is. But her attempting suicide makes it so her soul is potentially going to hell. And that's when this mysterious order of priests come in. The story underlying this movie is so rich and interesting, even if the screenplay doesn't quite take advantage of it. For instance, there's a realtor, Miss Logan, played by Ava Gardner, and she is wonderful in this movie. She creates the impression that what's going on between this religious order and hell is something that happens a lot, which is confirmed when we learn more about the order itself. But in any case, before we even see any of that, she confirms it by the way she acts. She seems, and I think she is a demon, by the way, though she doesn't say it. She acts in a fashion that implies that she's done this before, and she's frankly a little bored with it. But it's what she knows, and she does what she knows. So she rents an apartment to Allison, where the Sentinel stands guard, which is also at the gates of hell. So Allison moves in, and it's insane that this apartment costs $400 a month. It is not only huge, but fully furnished and gorgeous. I know that things were cheaper in the 1970s due to the value of the dollar, but you cannot tell me that you can get an apartment like this anywhere but in a movie. It's insanely voluptuous for $400 a month. But keep in mind something. She was originally charged $500 a month, but when Miss Logan saw that she couldn't afford that, she lowered it to $100. The goal is to get her into that apartment building. So it doesn't necessarily matter how much it costs, because they would make it affordable for her. So when she moves into the apartment building, she eventually meets Charles Chazen, played by the wonderful Burgess Meredith, who does evil like no one's business. And this is where the movie feels very much like Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, or I should say, Stanley Kubrick's Shining feels very much like this movie, as she meets the ghosts, or demons, I should say, in the form of various murderers who've passed. This is really interesting, and it's such a perverse little play that they perform. The goal of Charles Chazen, who is not Satan, but once again, a demon, his goal is to have Allison kill herself. Because if Allison kills herself, she wouldn't be the next Sentinel. The problem, though, is that the movie doesn't tell you why that matters. So Allison isn't a Sentinel. So what? Does that mean they get another Sentinel? Does that mean, I don't know what it means. Does it mean Father Halloran, who is the current Sentinel, stays on a little longer? I don't know what it means. And I wish the movie would tell us what it meant. Because there's no real stakes beyond if the Sentinel dies, the gates of hell are left open. And once again, okay, it doesn't seem to matter all that much. And that's a problem I put at the feet of Michael Winner, because he needed to make that clear why the Sentinel is important beyond a Christian theology. He never expands upon it. And as a result, I'm just left shrugging. It's like, I'm not sure I care all that much. The head of this mysterious Christian order is Monsignor Franchino, played by Arthur Kennedy. And once again, he is wonderful. The problem with Monsignor Franchino, though, is that he blurs the lines between Christianity and evil, in that he is quite willing to kill whoever he thinks threatens his project, which is to say, choosing a new Sentinel. And when Michael Lehrman, the character played by Chris Sarandon, threatens the Sentinel, Monsignor Franchini pretty much kills him. And once again, this is confusing because it makes the good guys very gray, which is something I haven't really seen in movies prior, and it reminds me very much of the Christopher Walken movie where he plays an angel. Christopher Walken also plays in The Sentinel. Coincidence? I don't know. In any case, there are no really good people in The Sentinel. Everyone are varying shades of gray. Some move towards black, but still, there's no shining example of humanity in this movie. And here's, I think, a great example of it. The only way that Monsignor Franchini can save Allison is that she has to try to kill herself. And he and the Sentinel, Father Halloran, have to stop it from happening. If Charles Chazen and the demons do whatever else they want to Allison, he's perfectly okay with it, apparently, because he doesn't stop them. The only thing he cares about is appointing a new Sentinel. And Allison is that Sentinel. So that she is literally, not figuratively, being plagued by demons, he does not give a shit. Though, the minute Allison is goaded into attempting to kill herself by Charles Chazen, suddenly he cares. And a new Sentinel, Allison, is appointed. As I said, this is a really fascinating movie. It doesn't do everything right. It's not nearly as scary as I remember it being, but it does a lot of things well. It is interesting, and the cast is remarkable. You have John Carradine, you have Beverly D'Angelo, you have Christopher Walken, you have Jerry Orbach. This cast is packed, and this movie is fascinating. I like it on a different level than I did when I originally saw it. As I said, I don't find it particularly scary, but the story it's telling about this mysterious religious order and the appointing of the Sentinel is fascinating. If only it had given more information about what the cost would be if the Sentinel weren't chosen, I think it would have been closer to a significantly better movie. As it stands, it's still quite good, quite watchable, and a lot of fun. Now, what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow.